rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief. It doesn't matter from where you came from or what you have become. We all end up, correction, we all begin as babies. And there is no one who knows this better than David Nelson.
Well, hello. Thanks for coming. Yeah, kept the applause going. That's good. Great, thanks. I don't even know why they included me in the show tonight, to be honest. They said they wanted someone to talk about the miracle of birth and how amazing it is, and how emotional and how much it changes you. But if you're looking for some kind of airy-fairy philosophy on something that's been going on since day dot, well, I'm sorry, you're not going to get that from me tonight. Now, I think what you want is something a little bit more down to earth. Now, my father, he was a paediatric neurosurgeon, and my mother was a pathologist, and my older brother, a doctor, older sister, doctor. So I guess you could say that medicine ran in the family. Even at the age of 4, I was dispensing medical advice to patients over the phone. They'd ring up mum or dad, and I'd answer the phone and I'd say, oh yeah, just take 2 aspirin and have a bit of a lie down. In my early years, I did some residencies in a few hospitals around Sydney. And then I joined the Navy. I was a doctor in the Navy for 18 months. And look, being a doctor in the Navy was an enjoyable enough experience, though it's not what you would call medically demanding. You're essentially treating a very healthy population. Tinea, boils, and VD. Not really things to get excited about. So I decided to move into obstetrics and gynecology and began studying while I was living in England. And that's where I met Lois, a nurse from Melbourne, and we had our first son, Philip. Now, the thing you need to know about England at that time is that it was very common for mothers to give birth in the home. Everybody did it. And I remember attending one particular residence, and the midwife had been into the bedroom and stripped the blankets back and had the mother laying across the bed. I walked in there and the delivery went very smoothly. But before we had time to rearrange the blankets, we could hear this kind of high-pitched whimpering coming from under the blankets. So the midwife pulled them back, and laying there the whole time was the grandmother. And she just looked up at me and said, "Can I have me potty?" It was at that point, ladies and gentlemen, I decided it was time to come back to Australia. People think that if you're an obstetrician, then the hours must be awful. Yes, they are. And they think that the patients must be demanding. Increasingly so, but nothing that I can't handle. They say that your family life must be horrendous. No, only if you choose it to be that way. I think family is very important, and it's what you make it. And they think that you must be constantly sleep deprived. Often. Though when I do sleep, I sleep pretty hard. A few years ago, Lois and I went and saw that musical in Sydney, the one where they, what's it called? The one where they all strip off naked halfway through and start dancing around and prance. What's the one called? Hair, yeah, that's the one. So we went and saw Hair. Well, I didn't really see it. I slept through most of it. Even when the cast saw me asleep and started dancing around me and singing to me, I didn't bat an eyelid. I still haven't seen it. But despite the challenges of the job, I cannot imagine doing anything else. There's not a late night call to the hospital that I regret, or attending extended labours that might stretch on for 2 or 3 days. It's my chosen field, it's my job, so I'll just get on and do it. Now my secretary, she gets annoyed with me because I refuse to chase clients for money. So I say to her, it's not about the money. If they could pay me, they would. The fact that they're not, well, they can lose sleep over that because I won't be. One of the things I've learned in life is not to get caught up on the little things. As I say to my kids when they get stressed or worried about minor things like schoolwork, just don't stress about it. It's that simple. It's not worth the worry. Or when they complain about minor ailments like a sore tummy. It's okay, mate. You'll be fine. I think you'll survive. Though in my son's case, I probably should have taken him a little bit more seriously. Turns out that tummy ache was an appendicitis. Sorry, mate. But we sorted it out, didn't we, hey? Dad looked after you. Yeah, after 3 days. When you're dealing with the precariousness of life and death every day like I do, you soon work out what matters in the big scheme of things. You know, sometimes I'll be walking down the street and I'll see a mother with a couple of kids in tow, walking up, and she'll smile at me and say, "Oh, hello, Dr. Nelson." And I'll smile back and nod, and I know that somewhere along the line I probably delivered those 2 kids, but I can't for the life of me remember her name or the particular circumstances. Now, that's not to say that I don't pay attention when I do my job. It's quite the opposite. In fact, I pride myself on the fact that for those few hours, I treat that mother-to-be as though she is the only mother-to-be in the world at that moment, and that her health and the health of her child are all that matters. And I'm aware that on a daily basis, I'm placed in the middle of life-changing events, emotional life-changing events for new mums and dads. But they're not life-changing for me. Now, that's not being dismissive, that's just being professional. Because I'm sure you'll agree that the last thing you want when you're giving birth is your obstetrician getting carried away in the excitement of the moment. And that's why obstetricians never deliver their own children, if they can help it. And of course, sometimes you can't. Lois and I are living in Affleck Street, Albury. She's heavily pregnant at the moment. It's late at night. We've had a wonderful barbecue with some friends. Lois wakes me up. She says she feels a bit uncomfortable. Now, I assure her that if she is in fact going into labour, it is the very early stages and nothing is likely to happen until later tomorrow. And I roll back over. She goes up to the toilet and yells out, "I think my water's just broke." "Well, get off the loo!" I go and get a towel, because when a mother says something's happening, she's usually right. It turns out that Lois is having what's called a precipitate delivery. That's when the labour skips the first stage and is extremely rapid. "Get in the car, quick!" We go down to the garage and get into the Major Morris Elite. And that's as far as we get. I deliver our new baby daughter, Hilary, on the front seat of the car. And of course, I deliver her calmly and safely and with the same professional care that I would afford any new mother. And then I get to the hospital really quick because the umbilical cord is still attached. We drive to the hospital, it's the middle of the night. I leave Lois and Hilary in the front seat and I go inside. Now, the sisters are sitting around having a cup of coffee and a good old chat. "Oh, Dr. Nelson, we didn't call for you." "I know. My wife has just given birth on the front seat of the car. Would you be kind enough to fetch a trolley for me, please?" "Oh, Dr. Nelson, you're so fun." "Move!" I think they got my message. That night I drove home very much relieved. Because people talk about the miracle of birth and how much it changes you. But for me, the dominant feeling has always been one of relief. Because mothers these days have been lulled into this false sense of security that birth is somehow straightforward or risk-free. And it's not. I've seen enough births that were going along very smoothly, then turned south very suddenly. So for me, it's always been that first cry, that first sign of life that has brought on that sense of relief, mixed with thankfulness and a little bit of pride. And you know, that feeling never really leaves you. There you go. That's the airy-fairy bit.
Useful life is lived, using his hands and heart, bringing them safely in.